Hello, everybody. Welcome to this first ever webinar on whitewater rafting. It's sort of me kind of recounting my rafting experiences along with my very good friend, Vaibhav Kala. But before we start, let me wish you all a very wonderful and happy Father's Day. A big shout out to all the fathers that are out there. I actually did this trip, one of these trips with my daughter Tarini, who's also going to be on the call and commenting. And I can tell you it's one of the singular pleasures of life to share an adventure with your daughter or your son. So I would totally encourage all you fathers or mothers to do such trips with your children, because it is a wonderful bonding experience. For me, my journey to adventure, actually, I owe to Vaibhav. It was I was sort of puttering around, not doing a whole lot. And I think this is back in 2001. And then suddenly this thing dropped out of the blue. And I'm always a kind of a carpe diem kind of guy, seize the day. And it was this call from Vaibhav to join the first ever descent of the Brahmaputra. And that's how our friendship was bonded, if you like, in water. He's been a great friend for the last 2 decades. He's, I think, the premier whitewater guy in India. And he found his passion in life very early, right after leaving college. He trained as a river rafting guide for about just literally 3 years, and then founded Aquaterra Adventures, which for 25 years has been, I think, the best whitewater rafting outfit in India, and also listed on National Geographic as the 2 best outfits in 2008 and 2009. So I owe Vaibhav a great debt for having introduced me to this life of adventure, and I'll just now hand over to him to talk about a little bit more of himself and maybe more about me.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ranjan. Happy Father's Day to everybody. And yes, I totally second Ranjan on outdoor trips with kids being one of the most memorable things that you can do, and we hope that in time you'd be able to do it if you haven't. These are experiences that do remain etched in one's memory, and more importantly, your kids when you're no longer there. So yeah, Ranjan's absolutely right. He was puttering about, but only after he'd made his millions in Hong Kong after he'd returned to India. So that's when I got to meet him on this big expedition that we were setting up on the Siang River in Arunachal in 2002. And yes, so I mean, it's and he was right about carpe diem. He's that sort of guy. He's turned a new leaf a couple of times, I think, and I think he might be doing that a couple more times before he hangs up his boots. So it's been a pleasure running, in fact, all 3 of these experiences that he's going to talk about. I have been guiding on those trips. In fact, the one that he did with Tarini, his daughter, I was there as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this, Ranjan. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, Vaibhav. Just in terms of the structure of the presentation, we're going to talk about the 3 big rivers that we've done together, starting with the Brahmaputra 2002, and then going to the Yangtze, which I'm going to spend a little bit more time on because I'm sure you're all very excited about that one. China's in the news for all the wrong reasons, but this river was an incredibly great experience, and it is still a very beautiful country. And then I'll end up with the Zanskar and talk about my, I'll talk about the Brahmaputra, the Zanskar, and then I'll end up with the Yangtze. I want to say before we start that all these 3 rivers are fantastic rivers. They're huge, big, whitewater. They're very different in their nature and aspect, each one of them. But each of them have a long drive-in to the put-in point, and that alone is, that itself is an incredible part of the whole experience. So let's start with the Brahmaputra. Next one. Yeah, so this is the map, okay? And here you can see, if you look in the, look at the Zangbo, that is where the Brahmaputra starts, okay? That's near Mansarovar, and then runs 1,000 miles across the Tibetan plateau all the way across to Arunachal, and then takes a big bend and then comes down into through Arunachal and into Assam. But that part over there, that top part over there, that is the stretch that we rafted from the border, the China border, to all the way down from the Tuting, yeah, down to Riga, and then Pasighat is where we took out, and then Dibrugarh is the point where we actually arrived. So I'm kind of doing it a little bit in reverse order. We flew to Dibrugarh, we took a river ferry to Pasighat, we drove up to Tuting, and then we rafted down and came out at Pasighat. Okay, next one. So this gives you an indication. You know, this is the Brahmaputra as we all know it. I'm sure you've all seen pictures of this. This is the Brahma. This is the big, flat, placid river. You can see the gang. We're all about to get onto the river ferry that will take us 8 hours up the river to Pasighat. Yes, next. And here at Pasighat, we are now loading the sumos with the kayaks. And the kayak is very important to the whole rafting expedition, because literally they're the people who, of course, they're enjoying themselves going down, but they're very important to saving you if you flip in the river. So we were very fortunate to have a talented group of 6 kayakers, and here they are tying the kayaks to the top of the sumos, and we're about to drive up into them Dar hills that you can see, the green ones. Next. We're now at Tuting, and at Tuting, I want to point out a couple of things in this slide. One is you can see how the river has literally cut through the face on the opposite side at about 200 feet off the river. This is not the normal river. This is because there was a huge flood. If you might remember that there was an ice dam that broke in China, in Tibet, and the water flooded down, flooding this entire region and destroying everything before its path. So you can just imagine the nature of the destruction. The second point I want to make is this rope bridge, this sort of across the Siang, as it's called over here, the Brahmaputra. And you can see the villagers. This is the only way that they can actually cross from side to side. And it's a pretty thrilling experience. Next slide, please. If you as you're walking across this, it's a pretty thrilling experience, because the damn thing is swinging from side to side. It's almost as exciting as being on a raft trip. It's certainly a preview to being on the raft. Next, please. And you can see this very sure-footed Adi tribes people. They're coming across. They're carrying literally everything on their in those koya baskets. Lovely people. We got to spend quite a bit of time with them. Next, please. We were the first group to descend the Yangtze. I mean, sorry, the Siang at this point, the first commercial big group. And we were quite a curiosity. We were, given a huge send-off by the Arunachal government, and all these ladies were part of the send-off. It felt like literally like minor celebrities or royalty. And so they'd all come down in their very colorful costumes. Next, please. And here you can see a variation. I mean, I couldn't tell you the differences really, but they all belong to different tribes. And it was such a warm and welcoming send-off to us. Next, please. Yeah, and the next one. Here is an example of an Adi tribesman, and he's wearing a dao around his neck. And this is a sword, kind of a very, like a dagger, which fortunately he wasn't using it on any of us, but it's a pretty fearsome looking thing, as you'll see in a slide or two. Next. Closer view, and you can see the kind of the calf jawbones that he's wearing as a triumphal kind of thing around his neck. Next. Here's a tribesman, and he's wearing his full headgear. Looks pretty fearsome. Wearing, bear bristles and kind of tooth kind of, claws. Vaibhav, what would you say those things are?
So the community is all hunters and gatherers. They live off, the land, so to speak. And what he has wearing is a headdress with bamboo and hair, which could be the mithuns or a bear. So yeah, that's
yeah. Just stay on for a sec, because we'll go on to the next 2 slides. Next, and this one, Vaibhav.
And that's a dao. It's like a machete, and every tribesperson in Arunachal, with rainforest as thick, or thicker than you'd find anywhere in South America. So I mean, it's cloud forest, so you can't really see much more than 6 to 8 feet inside the forest. So almost every person heading out would have a machete, which is called a dao, and that's really handy. And making a path, making your way through the undergrowth.
Right. Next.
And that's typically like a rucksack. It's a rucksack fashioned out of animal skin. And so typically hunting and gathering communities, when they go out to the forest, it may be for a few days at a time, and they need something to pack their kill in. And that's typically what is used: coir rope and a bag made out of animal skin. And the dao, you can see the scabbard of the dao sticking out on the left of the picture.
Thanks, Vaibhav. Yeah. Next, please. Okay, now this is what we had all come for. Okay, but I have to tell you, this is the biggest dam rapid I had ever seen in my life. I mean, I had nothing in my previous experience had prepared me for this. It was like huge. It was like a sea from end to end. There were waves of fearsome, threatening. You can see the raft practically submerged, and 2 rafts actually going through the Ninging Rapid. 15 minutes into the trip, this is what our first baptism by water was. And I remember going through it and we've actually flipped in this rapid, I remember. And it was like, I felt like the end of everything had come. I was drowning in that water. And then I popped back up, and of course I got saved by a kayaker, but it was pretty much close to a near-death experience. I can laugh about it now, but it wasn't anything funny at the time that we flipped in that water. And I'm going to show you now a video actually of frigging Ninging, as we called it afterwards, and show you the immense power of the Brahmaputra in this narrow gorge. So that big river that you see downstream, the one that we all think of as the Brahmaputra, this is the Siang. This is it in that gorge. Just looking at that rapid gives me the chills, even now, 20 years later, what it was like to go through that. And of course, as I said, we flipped in it. We live to tell the story another day, but it's certainly a lifetime experience, that's for sure. I actually wrote about this experience for the New York Times, and I never thought I'd get published in the New York Times, but it appeared in the travel section. So in some sense, my greatest hit as a travel writer came first, and it's been downhill since then. But it actually gave me inspired in me the confidence that I could do this as a passion and as a hobby to write about my experiences. Anyway, here we are at the campsite. We are just taking a bit of a breather after that. We would often find these campsites along the way. Just literally nobody there, nobody on that river, nothing and nobody. And we'd pull over on the left and we'd kind of break camp for the day. Next, please. And here, sometimes you'd come across a sand dune. So, there wasn't much you could do, but this is the only thing for miles. So we would have to beach the boats and then drag everything up that massive dune at the end of a tiring day. That's like not the thing you want to do, but no choice. Next. A little bit of relaxation, bit of beach volleyball. Again, the beach entirely to ourselves. Next. Towards the end of the day, we're all gathered underneath the tarpaulin. This is kind of like the dining tent, and this is where all the bonding would start and the fun and the chatter. and all the travails and the thrills of the day. We'd be talking about them. You know, once you go on these trips, you become friends for life with your fellow rafters. Next. The tents that we used to sleep in at night, these were the two-man rapid tents, and you can see the fog gathered. Very comfortable tents. I have to say, plug for Aquaterra. They do a great job in terms of looking after you, and both in terms of the food and the tents are certainly great people to go with. Next. Campfire, you know, again, hanging around. This is when the daru would come out and the stories would begin, and the real sense of bonding. Next day, of course, we had to face another rapid, and again, you can see the cataract, and the cataract is very important in terms of carrying loads forward. But here we can see also that the sort of scouting down, and I think this is maybe Palsi, maybe Mowing Madness, but you can see the huge size of the rapid. I mean, they're massive. I've never seen rapids this big. The scale of the river, the Brahmaputra, is just enormous. Next. And now I'm going to show you an actual live video of this team of that is about to negotiate the Palsi. So you'll see the commands being shouted by the guide, and you'll see how focused the team has to be, because, you know, one mistake here, one wrong thing, and you're in the water. So we can play the video. Max volume, please.
Okay, let's go hard forward now. Hard forward, team, hard forward. Harder and faster. Go. Dig it, fucking hell. We nailed the rabbit. Come on, go. Go. It's okay. Go. Fuck the rabbit. Nail it.
Next. So that's what we live for, us rafters. We live for that rapid, for just that adrenaline rush, which lasts only a few seconds, but man, it is such a thrill. And here, the next 3 slides will show you an actual flip in the Palsi. And so this last slide, if you can just hold it there, you can see the rafter just taken at that split second where there's just one person in the raft in the top left. You can just have a quick, with the pointer, I don't know if you can show that. You can see yeah, right there. That's the only person left in there, and he's going to be out in that in a millisecond. So this is a big flip in the Palsi. Next. Now this rapid is, you know, I'm sorry, I don't have an image or a video that would do it justice, but this is the grade 6. This is the killer rapid. This is the unrunnable, you know, unfathomable. It's called, this one we call the Tooth Fairy because there's an entire river running from right to left. And I think you can just see the kayaker in the bottom right of the screen. And you can see the scale, okay? The kayaker is just trying to, you know, creep along the side, but there's no way a raft can go through this because you'd be dead within minutes. You know, the raft would flip and you'd be slammed down under that water. So this is one which we portaged. It is a grade 6 rapid, still there, I think, running the river right to left. Didn't exist before, but because of that flood, which moved great boulders along on the bottom of the river, this is what we ended up with. So we didn't run this rapid, and we still don't run it. Next. And of course, now the Siang in its very different, kind of very placid, very beautiful kind of aspect, lovely green, flat stretches, beautiful scenery. Next. And obviously we would celebrate that. Somebody just flipping off doing a somersault off the raft. Next. Floating through, just enjoying the river, peaceful, quiet stretches. We do a lot of this kind of stuff, and then it would prepare us for the rapid around the corner. Next. Again, the kayakers, they're having a little bit of a breather. They're all hanging together. These are the guys who literally would save our skins if we flipped into the water. I mean, they'd be down there ahead of us, and they would pick us up. I actually got picked up by a guy called Pete, who was from Wales, and he fished me out of the water like literally like a dead dolphin practically. I'm very grateful to him because I don't know what would have happened without him. Next. And here we go, the cataract again, further view of the river floating down. Next. And this is the final video, okay, of the Brahmaputra. And I want to leave you with that thought in your mind, because the Brahmaputra is this. It's about these massive, big green whitewater. And this is, of course, Commander Kala battling forward on the raft. Maybe before we started, Vaibhav, would you like to say something about the whole Brahmaputra experience for, from a person who hasn't done it before?
So it's just that, I mean, it spoils you for choice if you were to do it as one of your first trips. It's the scale is just huge, like you showed us on Tooth Ferry, the kayaker sticking. So, I mean, once you have a reference point on the river, I think it's easier. That's a great photograph to get people to see the scale. And yeah, you'd probably see it on this video. So it's just massive water. It's running, and most of our runs are at about 60 to 70,000 cubic feet per second, which is one of the biggest pieces of white water that is run on the planet. So,
and when we went, it was very high, right? I mean, the highest almost.
Yeah, 2002 was right after the flood of the Yigong. So it was like the first descent after a massive flood where the river had changed. So a lot of the bedrock had got washed, and the rapids were very, very different and very big. As you'll see from this one down, Harry Hurry.
Yeah. Okay, we can play it. Next. Yeah, play it. Great. So I would do that in an instant again, Vaibhav. I can tell you, we've been talking about me doing the Subansiri. I would love to go back to that part of the world and do the tributary of the Siang. I miss it now, 20 years later. So now we're going to talk about the Zanskar. And this is the other fantastic experience that India has to offer. It's in the Ladakh region. It's buried, deep in between couple of ranges there in the Zanskar range, and it is a fantastic experience. It is completely different from the Brahmaputra. It is very austere. It is very severe country. There's not a tree or an animal in sight. There no greenery, nothing. Very cold water, brown water, but just as exciting. And you'll see from these slides what I mean. This was the river that Tarini came on. So it was the two of us in the raft. We shared a tent as well, and then some other friends, and then an international group of people. And I'll give Tarini a chance to say a few words during the course of this this presentation. Okay, let's start. Okay, so if you see this point called Nimu, that is the point where the Zanskar joins the Indus, and that was the end point. So we're going to go in reverse order. So go up the river. We're going slowly up the river. Can you just show that a little bit more slowly from Nimu, how we go? All the way up. That's right. Along the Indus, or up there. Yeah. And and here at the top end, you can see Kargil. Okay, so all of you have heard of Kargil, particularly nowadays, and we were very close to the frontier there. And then we turn south along the Suru. You can see that river there is called the Suru. Down here, and you see an amazing view of Nun and Kun. Then continue along the river. Yeah, and we came here, stop here. This is the Rangdum Monastery, and I'll show you some slides of that. And then we carry on over the Pensila, which is the high point of this, about 14,500 feet, and then way down to Remala. And from Remala, we put in. And from Remala, we would then raft all the way. These are the different stops: Karsha, Pidmu, Nyerak, Lamaguru, and Nimu. And you can see the river. Can you just show the river? And you can see how it's twisting and turning over here. And keep going up, keep going up. And then we would come here to the gorge was after Lamaguru, right? Am I right, Vaibhav, or just before?
I couldn't hear you, Ranjan.
Well, the gorge, the constriction was right before Lamaguru.
It's on the day we come down to Lamaguru, yes.
Yeah, between Nyerak and Lamaguru, am I right?
Yes.
Somewhere there. Yeah, exactly. Okay, excellent. Okay, so it's kind of like a circle, yeah? You come all the way around by road, and then you end up at the same point that you started out, but 6 days later, and with a most thrilling raft after a most thrilling expedition. Next one. On the way, as I was saying, you get to see some amazing scenery. And this is Shea Palace, one of the most famous sort of old Tibetan palaces over there. Next. Hemis Monastery. Classic, absolutely classic. Beautiful building. Walk inside, could spend at least a couple of hours in here. And by going towards Kargil and going deep into Ladakh, you actually see these things. Next. This is actually the Buddha statue at Shea Palace. And that Buddha, is literally, the face is about as big as the man as you see standing on the left. And the body actually goes down a whole nother floor. I'd never seen something that big. On the right is the Maitri, the future Buddha at a place called Mulbek. It's about 18 feet high, carved into the rock. Amazing things to admire and to spend some time with. Next. These are the moonlands from Lama Yuru. So Lama Yuru, not to be confused with Lama Guru, which I referred to earlier. And at the bottom left, you can see the road, just a little bit of the road there with the conifers. If you can show there we go. And these are the moonlands, I mean, literally it is like walking on the moon. You could looking at this thing, if you didn't want, you couldn't go to the moon, you could just come to Ladakh and look at this. And this is that kind of landscape. Next. And here is a Suru, which I had pointed out to you earlier. And in the background at the top, you can we go to the top? You can see the two peaks there, Nun and Kun, the two giant 7,000 meter peaks, twin peaks. And this is the Suru that drains those mountains. And we pass this incredibly beautiful country on the way as well. Next. And now we come to the Rangdum Gompa. And this is just amazing. It's like something, all of you guys have seen Game of Thrones. This is as good as, if not beats anything out of Game of Thrones. There is this one monastery in the middle of absolutely nothing. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It's such absolute wilderness and these beautiful Zanskar range, completely desolate, completely alone, completely isolated, and just this handful of monks that used to live there, 60 kilometers from any human habitation. Next. This is a closer view of the Rangdum monastery, and you can see the cows in front, and you can see the Zanskar range soaring up behind like a striated piece of quartz or something like that. The top of those peaks is about 16,000 feet. Next. And now we are crossing the Pensila, and you can see the Durung Durung Glacier, which is the largest one in Ladakh and the second largest one in all of India, coming down 22 kilometers all the way and draining down into the Stord and the Zanskar. Incredible scenery. Next. Okay, this is our first camp. I think it's a place called Karsha. And again, you can see the desolate, bleak nature. Just contrast this with the Brahmaputra, which was so much vegetation and greenery. Here, there's barely a blade of grass. And you can see the tents there to the left. If you can just show the tents to the left of the screen, near the rafts and to the left. Yeah, those tents. Yeah, and there's a village on the far side as well that you can see on the mountainside. And let's move to the next one. Beautiful mountain children. They'd come down. They were very curious. I don't know if it's still the same these days, but they would come down and spend time with us. And what wonderful features. They were very friendly. Next. And then we had, of course, a few little critters who would come and peek out at us, like these marmots that were the Himalayan squirrels. Very shy animals, but I think it's a good shot of one. Next. And again, a shot from, I think, from Pidmu, gives you a sense of the Zanskar, the big ranges behind, the giant size of landscape, just absolutely dwarfing you, and the river kind of floating through quite placidly at this point. Next. And this is the group that you can see now, they're all spread out. And this particular group, I have to spend a couple of minutes here. This is a great fun group. They were all from the Basque country of Spain, and they all refused to acknowledge themselves as Spaniards. We became pretty good friends with them. But they were great fun, but also a little, I would say, a little casual, or maybe a little foolhardy. They just kind of took life a little easy. And of course, they flipped in the huge big rapid. They were all in the river, had to be rescued. And we called that rapid forever after. It's been known as Spanish Fly. Is it still there, Vaibhav?
We've called it. We did call it Spanish Fly when that happened with the Basques. Eventually, there was a JCB that fell into the river, and we had a shoulder dislocation as well on it. So we've started calling it Dislocator.
Okay.
It's still very big. It's in fact bigger than the year when the Basques went down, and so yeah, it's one of the biggest ones in the Zanskar now, and it guards the entrance to the gorge. So
that's right. The gorge of the Zanskar.
Yeah.
Okay, and next. Okay, so here is the cataract, and we've got the Zanskar range behind. That's Tarini, my daughter, who's now at that age, was at the tender age, I think, of 21 or something, and Vaibhav and me. I'll give Tarini now a chance. She's in Hong Kong and she's joining us for the call. Give her a chance to say a few things about what came after this, in fact. Yeah.
So after this, we entered a rapid that is called the Constriction, which I believe is about 18 feet in width. And our raft basically flipped in the rapid. It was a really funny flip because it wasn't, this dramatic thing that happened, in a flash. It happened quite slowly, actually, because what happened was our guide lost his left oar, and then the raft got pushed towards the left wall of the gorge. So like if this was the gorge, our raft was like this, and then it just slowly flipped like that. So I feel like we all knew we were going to flip, but there was not much we could do about it. It was quite terrifying when we actually flipped. I got stuck underneath the raft along with one of the other members of our raft and thought I was going to die. I didn't, as you can see. Dad didn't really seem to be worried about my safety either, which I was quite upset about. But he will tell you, I'm sure.
Appropriate message for Father's Day.
But that you're supposed to look out for yourself first. So that's a learning that I've had from him in my life.
Look out for yourself first.
Yeah. So that's what happened after this.
Okay.
Tarini, also, I think your father was extremely scarred after his swim down Ninging and Palsi in 2002. So he was just picking up number one. I'm really sorry for that.
You should have been on our raft, Vaibhav, instead of like downstream somewhere, God knows where. But anyway.
Well, with you, the flip might still have happened.
Excellent. Okay, let's actually show you the constriction now. Okay, so here, this is the heart of the Zanskar Gorge, the Copper Canyon, and you can see to the top right, there's the rafts right at the end, but you can see the kayaker sneaking his way through, and then the cataract coming through. This is the entry point towards the constriction. You don't actually. The constriction is where the entire Zanskar that you see back there is squeezed into a gap, as Tarini mentioned, 18 feet wide. So you can just imagine the volume of water going through that, the boiling, surging volume of water. Let's move to the next one. And that's it. Looking down, it doesn't look very much. It looks, hey, this looks like a bathtub, but I can tell you, it is no bathtub. And I think the thing sucks you towards the bottom end where you can see the rocks, and then there's really very little you can do. And our raft went over, as she was saying, in like an instant and flipped in this boiling madness of water, which looks innocuous. I mean, it doesn't look like the big rapids that you saw on the Brahmaputra, but man, it was one hell of an experience. Next. Can we go to the next one? Yeah. And here we go through the constriction. And you can see this is the 18-foot gap, and it's a real battle to go through this. It's very narrow. You can see the photographer on the left. You can see the fully loaded raft. People are just absolutely battling through this. I'm going to show you a video next, which will give you an indication of what it is like to go through the constriction. And if you're quick enough, you'll see something happening. It's an 18-second, it's a very short video, about 25 seconds, but just take a look at what happens in the middle of that. Okay, can we play the video now? So as you can see, I don't know if you caught it or not, but right in the middle, people start back paddling. So they're front paddling, and then there's a command saying to back paddle, and immediately the paddle switch, because it's just to stay out of that churning mass of water. You have to be really quick to do that and really strong, and listen entirely to the guide, not to your instincts. Just whatever the guide is telling you to do, you got to do it, and you can stay out. We unfortunately didn't. Something happened. We flipped. Of course, we'll survive to tell the next day. And moving on, next. Yeah, so this is the, just before Nierak, this is an aquifer. It's beautiful. It says water just pouring out of this mountainside, and it's like a artesian well, basically. And it's just like a magical thing. Again, something like maybe out of Game of Thrones or something, where this water just pouring out of a cliffside, a beautiful waterfall. Next. Climbing up to the top of that waterfall, looking down at it. Next. And now leaving it behind. So you can see it there to the left. It was just this magical jewel in the middle of the gorge, all by itself, water pouring out of nowhere like the promised land. You can see the striation, see the enormous pressure on that rock, yeah? You can see how curved it is in terms of the pressures that have created this in this fantastic gorge, which is incredible. Next. Red River, this is the Red River Canyon, and we're just now winding up. You can see that again part of the same canyon, but you can see the nature of the landscape, just so stark. Next. And now we're at the end of the trip, and we're at Lama Guru, and looking down towards the end, and everyone's kind of in a relaxed mood. We've done the Zanskar. It's a tremendous happy feeling. Everyone's relaxed, and the next slide will show you the final one. Next. Yeah, so this is the group. We had a very fun group. My daughter, some friends, some European friends. Maybe Tarini, you'd like to just just give your overall impression of the trip and about this group.
So yeah, a couple of Dad's really close friends were part of this group, and so they came with
Also,
us.
you're good friends now, I think.
Yeah, in fact, I hang out with them more now than just,
in Hong Kong.
But yeah, so they were part of this trip, which was nice because, I mean, it's obviously nice to, meet new people and everything, but then you kind of have like, your really old buddies as well that you can just like, be yourself with. I think in this group, there were 2 Italians. The girl next to me, I think her name was Isabella, and her boyfriend, Paolo, the one below him. And so the 2 of us were the ones that got stuck underneath the raft. And of course, Isabella was like really worried about Paolo's safety. And as I mentioned earlier, Dad didn't really care about mine. And I think...
Funny thing is, Tarini, you and I are together and they're not together anymore. So there you go. That's the moral of the story.
That's also because we don't have a choice, Dad. But, yeah, I think the girl below me was a German girl, and her boyfriend, I think, was one of the safety kayakers. I can't remember our guide's name. Was it Rana or something? But yeah, our guide, and yeah, that was our group.
Yeah, and the final point on this is that, the Italians actually abandoned ship of the Spanish raft and came on to our raft because they were sick of these people talking in Basque language only. It's like a bunch of Bengalis only talking Bengali and one Punjabi. So they said, let's get onto a raft where we can actually speak the language and share it with the other people and have a little bit more fun. So the Italians and the Germans and the European Union split up and joined the Indians. But it was a great bunch, and we're still in touch with many of them. So that was the end of the Zanskar trip. We can go to the So now I just want a little bit about the Yangtze. The Yangtze came. It was again a carpe diem moment for me. I just about turning 50. I thought, I got to do something to mark this moment, something memorable, something I'll never forget. And Vaibhav and I were talking about the Zanskar at that point, actually. He said, why don't you come? Why don't you come? And I was almost about to do it when we got this amazing call to go on the Yangtze. And I'll let Vaibhav explain a little bit more about how we ended up on the Yangtze, that particular group. But the second thing about the Yangtze for me, as a schoolboy, I'd learned all about the Yangtze as a kid, and maybe we can just show the next slide and I'll keep talking. Sorry, go one more slide, please. And then we'll come back. Okay, so here's the Yangtze, and this river is 6,300 kilometers, all the way from its source to the where it goes into the East China Sea near Shanghai. And it is the 3rd largest river in the world. And also, I mean, I just had the romance of the Yangtze, the son of the ocean was stayed with me. The third factor was that this river was being dammed by the Chinese at an alarming rate. And it was never going to be offered again, that particular rafting trip, because once they dam the river, the rapids disappear. So that's it, done, no more white water. And, China has a huge appetite for hydropower and so on. So it was these 3 things which kind of drove me towards the Yangtze. But maybe I'll just give Vaibhav a chance here to talk a little bit about that Sobek group and how we ended up with them.
Thanks, Ranjan. So I got a call, from Jed Weingarten, who Ranjan had also done the Siang with in 2002. And they were building the 7th dam above Three Gorges Dam, which in fact is so large that it's caused a little wobble in the way the earth rotates on its axis, the amount of water it holds. So the Chinese were building 7 dams to stop the silt from reaching Three Gorges Dam. This dam has ship locks, and it transports ships up to the upstream side of the dam using these big locks. And so it had legendary sort of beginnings. The Chinese did not want the Americans to come and do the first descent, so they in fact sent a couple of big tubes down the Yangtze, down Tiger Leaping Gorge. The Americans did the first big full descent. This was an opportunity to go on what was going to possibly be the last descent. And from what I heard from Jed was that yes, it was there was probably maybe an odd trip or 2 which could not complete the course, and so ours was pretty much safe to say the last full descent of the Yangtze below Tiger Leaping Gorge. So that's how Ranjan and me got invited to come on this trip.
And I think we were the only two Indians to ever raft the Yangtze. Am I right? I don't think anybody did it before us. Certainly nobody did it after us.
I haven't heard of anyone. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Exactly. So we can claim that. We can claim it for ourselves, I think. Anyway, just if we can go back one slide, just go back one slide. Yeah, I just want to refer you guys to this book. It's called Riding the Dragon's Back, The Race to Raft the Upper Yangtze. Incredible book. I mean, if you want to read about adventure, you want to talk about, the last great big whitewater in the 80s, there was this enormous race between two Chinese teams and an American team led by the Sobek expeditions people. And they were going hell for leather down this incredible river, determined to raft it right from the top to the bottom. And I read this book and I was just captured by it, And as Vaibhav said, the Chinese were so nationalistic, so full of patriotic fervor. And we see that, of course, it's almost like a Chinese characteristic. They actually strapped two rafts together upside down and went in a capsule, like a capsule. And of course they died. And I'll show you where they died. So it was very brave, but very foolhardy. Eventually the Americans came out on top. Richard Banks was one of the group, and he wrote this amazing book. I would highly recommend, if you like adventure, if you want to read about stuff that is just mind-boggling, like the first ascent of Everest, read this book. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. The map. Yeah, so again, can we just show, I just want to show you where we put in, okay? We actually put in at a place here called Daju, came down to what's called the Big Bend, coming down, coming down to, just move the pointer. Yeah, no, move it down to Lijiang and then up. Yeah, and then down again. Down again, yeah. So this is the stretch that we rafted, okay? And this river here is called the Jinsha, the river of golden sand. And this is the section which is just incredibly, stunningly beautiful. And I'll show you the gorge that we went through, the gorge of the Big Bend, but even the Tiger Leaping Gorge, which is just the most incredible gorge that I've seen. Further down, you can see the Three Gorges dam has come up and it's flooded everything up from there. There are like 200 dams on the Yangtze now. That a lot of that whitewater sadly has gone forever. But another thing about the Yangtze is that it comes right off the river, off the Tibetan plateau there to the left. It's blocked by the Himalayas, the Kunlun Mountains, and the Pamir Knot, and the only way for it to go is to the east. And then it becomes the Jinsha, and then there's that mountain range which turns it up north, and that little jagged end that we see over there. And that's why it's very different from the Salween, the Mekong, or the Irrawaddy, all of which go straight down and into the Indian Ocean. The Yangtze had a different future. Okay, we can move to the next slide. So we flew to Kunming, which is the capital of Yunnan, and then from Kunming we flew to this wonderful little town called Lijiang. And Lijiang, the Chinese have a tendency to pull down everything, but here they've preserved some of the old history. And this is the old town of Lijiang, and this is the Moose Palace. So we spent a day over here. Next slide. And this is kind of like a souvenir shop, bit Disneyland type, you could go around and buy stuff, all made in China, and this is in China. You can see the red lanterns and stuff like that. But it was fun, nevertheless, for us to walk around. Next. This is called the Wang Yu Tower. Again, very beautiful Chinese architecture. Next. The water wheel. I mean, Lijiang is kind of like like the Venice of the Yunnan. So a lot of beautiful water canals, and of course the city doesn't depend on this anymore, but they preserved it very well. One thing they really do is they preserve their culture and heritage really well. And these water wheels are there, and you'd see these wonderful clear streams, canals, running through Lijiang. Next. And yeah, I tried my hand out a little bit of music. They were very welcoming and friendly, these musicians. They were part of the Nakshi tribe, actually. So they actually don't speak Chinese. They're actually the very small minority of people in China who don't actually speak Han Chinese. They're the majority tribe in that area. And anyway, I was joining the musicians and having a little bit of fun. Next. This is the group. We are now in Tiger Leaping Gorge, a very international group. We're at a place called Sean's guest house. Mainly all Americans. You can see Vaibhav in the top left corner, just enjoying a meal before we get on the river. Next. This is the way down to Tiger Leaping Gorge, and I'm going to show you the gorge in a minute, but it's a very, very steep climb down, and you can see how treacherous it was. You can see the steep climb. It's about like I think something like 2,000 feet down, and you can see the stone statue there of the tiger. Now the Tiger Leaping Gorge. Maybe we can show the next slide. Oh, sorry. Let me explain this one also. This is a Nakshi tribesman, old man. We were climbing down. He's looking at us. He's curious. He's wondering why in the hell are we going down in there? And we're as curious about him as curious about us. But very interesting and funny photo. And he was just standing there, being very philosophical, smoking his pipe, and saying, "Well, the youngsters these days, we can never." Say what they're going to be up to next. Next one. Yeah. Okay. So this is the gorge, and I can't do it justice. Actually, this is the deepest river gorge in the world. The Grand Canyon, and I'm sure many of you have been there. 1,600 meters, 1.6 kilometers. This one is 3,600 meters, 3.6 kilometers from the river, the Jinxia all the way to the top. And at the top, and you can't see the top, are these two giant mountains called Habashueshan, I think it's called White Jade Snow Mountain, and Yulong Shuesan, my Mandarin is hopeless, and Habashueshan, which means Snow Mountain, Haba Snow Mountain. And this gorge is formed in between them. So this is the Yangtze slithering like a emerald snake. Sorry about the analogy. I know it's a cliche, but that's what it was. And that rock face that you can see over there, it's about 1,000 feet, just there. Okay, let's move to the next slide. And that's beyond Tiger Leaping Gorge. So, you can see how the river is just rushing through this gorge on its way down. It's completely not navigable over here. This is where the Chinese group died. And I'll show you exactly why that happened. Next one. This is me actually climbing down, and you have very steep ladders all the way down. You had to negotiate these things for at least a couple of hours to get to the bottom. Next. And again, another view of the Tiger Leaping Gorge. You can see the river on either side. You can see how sheer and how sharp edged those walls were. Next. This is it. I had never seen anything like this. This is a grade 6 all the way, mother of them all rapids. It is like a huge, giant grade 6. It is, just to look at it, it's like a giant washing machine gone mad, and you can imagine what would have happened to a raft. And the Chinese raft, they strapped the two rafts together upside down, which I'm sure Vaibhav will tell you is complete madness. And they were inside that thing like a capsule because they thought they could get through this. And of course, the raft split apart in the middle of this, and they all drowned like within seconds. Let's move down. Again, this is a view of Tiger Leaping, the gorge, the rapid. Let me just explain Tiger. It's a story, a Chinese story, a historical story of a tiger that leapt across this 25-meter gorge to flee from an approaching hunter. And that's how it got this name of Tiger Leaping Gorge. You really don't want to get too close to this. It's just watching it is awesome. Next. Okay, so after the thrills of Tiger Leaping Gorge, we now came down to a flatter stretch of the Yangtze, and this is our put-in point called Daju. And you can see all the rafts all lined up over there. It took us a day to get very beautiful scenery, blue-green river, and just about the day before we put in at a place called Daju. Next. And this is kind of the next 3 slides will give you an indication of the kind of rapids that we were going through. And, they were all sort of 3+4 rapids, not as big as the Brahmaputra, I would say, but exciting nevertheless. And for us, it was fascinating just to be on the Yangtze. And the river happened to be a little lower, so the rapids were probably a little less challenging. But then when you're talking about a rapid that's still a grade 4, it's still pretty damn challenging. Next. Again, this is I think the raft, how the rapid would just slam the raft up against the river. And at one point, deep inside the great bend of the Yangtze, we came across a rapid called Judgment Day. And what a name! It was because of an American judge that had actually flipped out of the raft a few expeditions before. And it was like a hell of an appropriate name for a rapid because it guarded the entrance to the Great Bend. And we didn't flip in it, but it was a massive, massive rapid. Next. And this is the group of us battling again through some of the rapids on the Jinxiajiang. Next. And then a little bit of peaceful, a little bit of a break. A friend of mine called Colin, the guy who's playing on the guitar, and other chap Ken, looking up high up at the top of the gorge, 3,000 feet above us. It was a fun group. Next. So we had this guy called Willie. He was a kayaker, and he was one of the pioneers, adventurers who actually opened. And he did this incredible thing. He dragged this kayak all the way to the top of this rock face, and he did it on his back, right? And you can just imagine. I mean, for any of us, even just climbing up that thing would be pretty impossible. He took this kayak up and his oar, put the kayak on the top, and like a stuntman, just shoved the kayak off and straight down into the water, about 20 feet below. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like an incredible stunt. Next. And here's the typical shot of the Yangtze. Beautiful, curtains, you can say, of iron, velvet, colored purple, colored, all kinds of colors. And in certain parts, because of oxidized over millions of years, you would see these red patches. You can see that in the right over there. And you're just breathtaking. You would just look up at this and find it pretty incredible. Next. So again, at a point where the Yangtze flattened out a bit, and those of whom would see me today will see I put on a lot of weight since that time. But in those days, I used to be slim and sexy. But you can see the rafts and the cataraft over there pulled up, and we're taking a bit of a break day here. Next. The cataraft, very important, these catarafts, right? Because it carried all the weight, all the load. You can see those plastic drums on board on the raft, and it would carry a lot of weight for us. It was like a freight train, taking stuff down. Next. Again, break day on the Yangtze. A bit of, we all know about social distancing today. A little, I don't know why. I think here we just spread out because we had enough space. 3 or 4 tents, big, and we had this dining area right in the middle. This is, I think, on day 3 or day 4. Next. And yeah, the 2 pioneers of the Yangtze. As I said, very proud to have done this with Vaibhav. And, it was an incredible trip. And I think for us, very special because no one else had ever been there, at least, none of our friends in India, and no one else would unfortunately get a chance to do it again. So it was a very special moment. We would sleep out underneath the stars, and look up, and it was just a surreal experience, Okay, next. Again, the Yangtze, and you can see the same kind of very, very, the tall, very red kind of walls, and the rafting. We were rafting through this canyon a lot of the time, and a very, very picturesque, very dramatic scenery. Next. Occasionally, very occasionally, we would have a Chinese boat pass us, and this is what it was, and this is they were just passing us on the river. Next. Okay, my friends Colin and Elliot, whom I rafted a lot of the stretch with, and again, it's a tremendous bonding experience when you do this together. You live through all these rapids, and tremendous. It's a fantastic experience. Next. Another friend, John. He was a chiropractor. He's the guy who came with the guitar. And fortunately, we didn't need his services, Vaibhav, on this trip. But he was a fun guy, and he had a guitar. And there you are in the back. Wonder what the thoughts are that are going through your head. I think you're just pretty tired after rafting, that particular stretch. Next.
Yes, long trip. Yeah, taking a moment in.
Yeah. Taking a moment. Next. Again, artesian well, an aquifer, and you can see the water just pouring out of this artesian well, and you could just watch this and imagine like what a force of nature it was, like water running vertically down, or but you almost felt it should be horizontal with a clump of trees and water running out of it, but it was vertical. Next. And trip is winding down. Enormous force of nature pushing. You can see these flat, walls of stone being shoved straight up out of the riverbed. And this was only about 200-300 feet, but the gorge itself was, like I said, thousands of feet. So the force of nature here was just gargantuan. Next. And now we are at the end, and we are just about climbing. We've already put in, and we're climbing up to a beautiful little village called Baoshan. Baoshan means guard mountain. It actually was the last outpost, one of the last outposts of the Han Chinese Empire, when they were looking out for the Mongols that would come invading out of the north. And we are walking up the terraced fields, and you can see the Yangtze here is much calmer. And let's move on. Next. Yeah. The group, tired and exhausted, but really happy, climbing up these terraced paddy fields towards the end. Next. And that's Baoshan, beautiful mountain village. Nakshi, as I said, mountain village. And we're approaching it. Next. Just entering the village. Next. That's a view of Baoshan the next day. And fortunately here, at least a lot of the culture has been preserved. If you ever get to go to China, there's a lot of places to see, like Beijing and Shanghai and all the other great cities. But there's very little of the old China. But here, if you go to Lijiang or you go to even further, the old China continues, and the beauty of this village is quite breathtaking and definitely worth a visit. And you can see that old wall also preserved in front. Next. And this lady, this old Chinese lady, she was making dinner for us. And she was also wondering, so what in the hell are these people doing here, But, as long as I guess we were giving her some employment, she's smiling and she's enjoying the experience. We had some amazing Chinese food on this trip. Just incredible. As I said, on the whole, everybody there in China, among the people, and I'm drawing the distinction with the government, were incredibly friendly and hospitable towards us. And we shouldn't forget that, actually. Next. The horses laden with kit bags, This is the mules. You know, they're kind of taking the stuff back up from the Mu family guest house. You can see that on the top left. That's where we stayed, Mu family guest house. And now, next slide. Next. Yeah, loaded up the truck, ready to go. About to go back to Lijiang. Next. And that's our last view of Baoshan. We are at the road. So the village itself is nowhere near the road. It's like another, 300-400 feet that we had to climb further up to the road. I don't know what it's like now, of course. This trip was done in 2008. I'm sure there's a paved, it's all probably changed now. But it was, in those days, move to the next, please, last slide. Yeah, so that's the last slide, the last view of the Yangtze that we had. I doubt that I'll ever see it again, in the corner. And me standing up wearing trademark Brahmaputra. At that point, I'd only done the Brahmaputra. And so we have the Brahmaputra. I mean, I'm wearing t-shirts, looking a lot thinner than I do now. And so that's the end. And I hope you guys have enjoyed the ride through this amazing experiences that we've had. Vaibhav, do you have any last minute thoughts?
No, it was fabulous. Thank you for taking us down the three rivers. We hope the situation is going to improve soon and we can all go back and enjoy the outdoors like we used to. And we hope to see all of you back.
Absolutely. And now if anybody's got any questions, please submit them and we'd be happy to answer them.
Dad, I think somebody did ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead. What is the question?
Hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Swati Mehta.
Yeah.
What kind of preparation is required for such activities when it comes to fitness?
Okay,
I'll let Vaibhav answer that. He's the expert.
Swati, it's honestly, I mean, the fitter you are, the more enjoyable any trip becomes. But having said that, most of these journeys require people to be in at least average levels of fitness. There are short hikes, involved basic sort of basically you'll be walking around a lot more, even if it's at camp, setting up your tents, getting stuff out of your raft, out of your bags, sleep, just the normal physical sort of activities far greater than say lockdown in Delhi or at home. So yeah, the fitter you are, the more enjoyable it is going to be. But average levels work very well too.
Yeah, Ganesh, can you switch it please to showing Vaibhav and me? Yeah. Okay. Have you got any more questions for Vaibhav, for me, for Tarini? I'm happy to answer them. I saw your daughter back there, Vaibhav. She wants to go on that trip with you, man.
Yes, I think
she's inspired now. She's inspired by Tarini.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions? No questions. Okay, well, I just want to, before we sign off, I want to stand up over here and just show you what the present me, and also the t-shirt advertising for Aquaterra, and it's now got the Zanskar on it, right? So Brahmaputra, Zanskar, a couple of other red ones. Unfortunately, not the Yangtze, but having done that all before. But I'd like to thank Vaibhav for this, to Sumeru and to Ganesh who did all the back end, to Tarini for being on the trip.
One more question.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Can you please tell us a bit more about what exactly happened with the Chinese with the two rafts from Renzi Thomas?
Okay, I don't really know too much about this Renzi. I read the book and all I can tell you is that they didn't have the technology or the experience, but they were determined from a very nationalist and patriotic point of view And we know how the Chinese can be about those things. Things haven't changed much. About being the first, to raft the Yangtze. They were determined. They in fact, Chinese government put a lot of very stiff taxes, and they made it kind of a little difficult for the Americans to come through. But so the Chinese got the first shot, but they didn't have the technology. What they did was they took the one raft and they strapped the other raft on top of it, upside down, and they stuck themselves in the middle. If you see what I mean, no oars, they just wrapped themselves around like a toffee, and then they just put themselves into this capsule and then went down the Yangtze. It's a completely mad, foolhardy thing to do. They thought, we're just going to come out the other end. Sadly, they didn't. They ran into the Tiger Leaping Gorge, slammed into that river, into that thing, and the first damn thing that happens is the raft split apart. I mean, under the force of that, you can just imagine, you could put a truck in that, and it would be shattered in within seconds to nothing. Two rafts, what chance would they stand? So, and I think in that kind of water, you drown immediately. There is no chance of survival because you don't get flushed out. Vaibhav can perhaps say something about this, but I think you basically, you get pushed all the way down to the bottom, you come back up, you get pushed down, up and down until you basically choking on water and you completely drown. Like what would have happened on the Tooth Ferry had we tried to run it. I don't think Vaibhav has ever had any casualties on any of his trips, but maybe Vaibhav, you can talk a little bit about,
So Renzi, to answer your question, I think there is at least one surviving Chinese from that epic descent where they went down in capsules. And I think what they did was they went in high water, which possibly, gave them no chance of survival through the Tiger Leaping Gorge. But before that, there was an expedition by Ken Warren. He was a big river runner. They used diamond rigs on Tiger Leaping Gorge. A diamond rig was basically 5 rafts strapped together. I will try and post some photos on Ranjan's link later. And that's some of the rapids in Tiger Leaping Gorge were run by strapping 5 rafts together. In what's
that's
called
right.
Rig.
A diamond rig, right? In diamond the rig, Ken Warren strip, right? Yes. For the higher up, yeah. But do read the book. I mean, the book is a fascinating read, about how one of the last great rivers in the world was rafted. And, they had nothing in those days, just pretty incredible what they went through. And they rafted it from much further up, and to Tiger Leap. We just did 6 days through the most beautiful section. Do we have any other questions? I think some people didn't make it onto the Facebook page. Problem with the link, but we do have this thing recorded. So afterwards, anybody who hasn't made it on can let us know, and you can always see this. It's going to be stored over here and recorded.
There is one more question.
Yeah.
The Brahmaputra rapids seem much more dangerous than the ones described in another presentation a few weeks ago. Is it possible to skip them and walk instead, like we did in Vaibhav from Manila, Berlin?
Well, some of the rapids on the Siang, you can walk around, but a lot of them are very, very long. So they're like, a rapid on the Siang from the start to the finish could be, a kilometer long. So not all the rapids are walkable from the side. It's sometimes it's not physically possible, but some are. And it'll take you ages to walk where, on the riverbed with big boulders and rocks, etc. So you're probably better off, in the raft and taking a swim rather than ending up with a few, ankle twists. So it's safer to be on the river.
Well said, Vaibhav. Well said. I mean, I think that when we went down that thing, it was at its highest ever, and we flipped twice in the Palsi and in the Ninging. But yeah, I mean, I think I'd like it. I don't mind the shortcut. The long way would have been just horrifically long and tedious and difficult. Except, of course, for the Tooth Ferry. That is not recognized. That is not recommended. That was. I don't know what does the Tooth Ferry look like today. I haven't been there in 20 years.
So I was there in December 2019, about 6 months ago, and the river seems to have been filling up the bed. After the 2002 flood, so 18 years has filled up that bed. The pillow is a lot smaller, And I think in a year or so, I mean, at lower river levels than when we run it in November, which is still fairly high. I think if we were to run it in December or Jan, it would probably be a go for rafts.
Great. So, do we have? Well, we've got further adventures. I think Vaibhav, maybe offshore together. Maybe not in India. We've done some of the big, but hopefully we'll do a lot more in the future. There's the Futalefu, the Zambezi. There's so much other stuff, right?
Yes,
which you offer, don't you?
Yes, we do. Yeah. So we're looking forward to getting COVID out of the way and getting back to the lives we love.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I just want to say one last thing in closing is that as I said, I owe my ticket to adventure to Vaibhav when I started this with him, and since then I've just got sucked into it like a big rapid, and now I'm a full-time freelance travel writer. All of these things, these rap stories, I've written on for everything from the New York Times to the Air India magazine to Outlook Traveler to Condé Nast, and more recently Travel and Leisure and Nat Geo. So please do visit ranjanpal.com, and if you haven't already, and you'll see all the written stories are there. And when you read the accounts, I'd love to hear from you. You can write to me and subscribe to the blog if you like, etc. But adventure is the way to go, folks, on Father's Day. Thank you so much, and I think we can sign off now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.